Hey everybody, we're going to go over the major scale today, okay? So this is just a fundamental music theory that is super important to know. I like to tell my students that music theory, even though people aren't really making any new music theory, there is so much depth to music theory and depth of understanding. So even if you feel like you've got something now, if you continue your musical pursuits, I guarantee you'll still have different levels of breakthroughs throughout your musical pursuit. Uh, that's what I've found and what my students have found, that you can understand something at one level and then you go through and you have another experience and it's like, oh, I thought I got it, but now I really get it. And then 2 years later or 4 years later or whatever, it's like something else happens. You're like, I never really understood it that way. So anyway, just be patient with yourself. It's just a lifetime of learning in this. And so we're going to start here with this major scale, okay? So I have detailed 5 rules to create a major scale. Some of them are a little redundant, but I do that on purpose for clarity, okay? So the first thing is that every major scale will be named after its first note, the root note, the name of the scale. So a G major scale is going to start with G. A major scale start with A. B flat major scale start with B flat. Okay? So we've got that. So just remember that. Okay? Now, number 2 would be every single major scale will have all 7 letters. Okay? So it's going to have we talked about it in other lessons, it has A, B, C, D, E, F, G. It's going to have one of every single letter. Okay? Next, it will only have one of every single letter. So this is number 3. I put up number 3 and then I said it will only have one. So this is rule number 3, is that each letter will only happen once, and it can only happen once. Okay? So there will only be one A, one B, one C in any major scale, whether it's a G major scale or B major scale or whatever. Okay? Next, let me look at it. Number 4. The major scale has 7 notes. That's the way it is. The 8th note is the octave, so there's 7 degrees. Okay. If we start on A, B, C, D, E, F, G, that's 7, and then A, we get back to 8. Okay, A. Okay. And then the last rule, the 5th rule is, okay. So the 5th rule is where we get to accidentals, okay? So the accidentals are what are going to be used to make sure that we maintain what's happening underneath all those letters, okay? So let's talk about that. Well, the letters in music are really shorthand for the intervals, the math that's going on underneath, okay? So the accidentals help us create the correct math. They help us create the correct distance between each note that has to happen for a major scale. So the major scale formula, this is it. This is the way it is. It will always be. It's a whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. Okay? Whole step, half step, whole step, half step. Okay? So just write that down. Whole step, half step, whole step, half step. That's what it is. It will always be that way, no matter where you start. Okay? It has to be that way. Okay? So that whole step, half step thing, on the guitar, a whole step is 2 frets. So if I start on the 5th fret here, a whole step up is the 7th fret, or a whole step down is the 3rd fret. Okay? If I go a half step, it's just 1 fret. If I still go to the 5th fret, the 6th fret is a half step. The 4th fret is a half step down. Okay? So whole step, half step, whole step, half step. So now hopefully you've watched the other material and you know this already, but this is the E string. Okay? So if I want to make an E major scale, I'd say I need to go up. I start there, I make a whole step. So I don't even need to worry about what this is. I make a whole step. I make another whole step. I make a half step. Now I gotta make 3 whole steps. Whole step, whole step, whole step, and then another half step. So whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. Yeah? And so hopefully you recognize that as, you know, that do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Okay? So there you go. That is an E major scale because we started on E. So you start from whatever note you want and you use those intervals and you'll make a major scale. So then what happens is then you have to use accidentals for pretty much every single key except for C major. So if you go to a piano, it'd be really easy to see visually. If you were to pick out a C, then you could just literally walk up the white keys. You don't have to hit any black keys, and it would make a C major scale. If you were to pick any other white note on the piano, and you wanted to make a major scale, you would have to use a black key. Okay? You wouldn't be able to make it with just all white keys. C is the only one. Okay? So C is the only one, only key, only major scale that doesn't have any accidentals. Okay? So every single other one you're going to have to use accidentals. All right? So now let's do another example. Okay? So let's do A. So now we didn't talk about the letters on the other one, but so let's talk about the letters for this one. So let's do the major scale first. The intervals. We go up a whole step, up a whole step, up a half step, up a whole step, up a whole step, up a whole step, up a half step. So this is the A string. So we go up a whole step. That happens to be a B. That's great. We go up another whole step. If you know your natural note names on the guitar, you would know that this is a C, this is a D, this is right in between. So now we go back to our rules. I said that there has to be one and only one of every note name, okay? The next note name after B is C. So this has to be a C of some type. Because it's up from the C, it's a C sharp. Okay? A, B, C sharp. We're going to go back to the interval part. This needs to be a half step. So we're at D, which happens to be D. That's great. We don't have to do anything. So now we have A, B, C sharp, D. Now we do 3 whole steps. D to E, you should know this is a whole step, so that's good, we're good, this is an E. E, now we got to do another whole step, but E to F is a half step. So the next letter after E, this has to be an F, but the F is at here, so this is an F sharp. Okay, so now this is where it helps to know where the actual natural notes are. The G is right here. But the whole, I need another whole step. I know because we just used F that this next note has to be a G. It has to be a G. So a lot of times it helps, and in the worksheets that I have for you guys, I explain, just write out all the letters. Get those because they all have to be in there, okay? You just used your F, which is an F sharp. Now you know the next one's going to be some type of G. And it happens to be a G sharp because now we have to do that whole step, and it's a G sharp, and then we have half step, G sharp to A, and that's A. So now we're back in the beginning. So we have A, B, C sharp, D, E, we have F sharp, G sharp, and we're back at A. There we have it. So now it's your mission, if you choose to accept it, to figure out how to do major scales, all different types of major scales. Again, I have worksheets for you, so you can use those, figure it out. It just takes that brain power, you working it out over and over. So this is more about the theory side, but more about understanding these intervals, understanding what those letters and what accidentals do to create these intervals, okay? Hopefully this increases your understanding. You now know how to make a major scale. You might not be able to do it very quickly. And eventually, a lot of people memorize these things, but I think it's really important. A lot of people that memorize them don't understand what they've memorized. Okay, I'd rather give you the understanding. You might be a little slow at first. Eventually, you might memorize them. Guitar is a very shape-based instrument, so it's really easy to memorize scales without knowing why you're memorizing them or what's behind the memorization. So now you have a little bit of depth to your playing if you already play major scales but don't really know about this stuff. Let me know what questions you have. Hopefully all the worksheets and stuff I have on Patreon will answer any of those questions. But anything that you have questions for, let me know. I'm here for you, okay? Thanks so much. Wishing you best of luck in your guitar, and enjoy the work. Bye-bye.